Nice and happy. 1, 2, 3.
This is where Victoria's Commonwealth Games saga began. 2 hours north of Melbourne, lying along the Goulburn River, is the old sheep station town of Shepparton. And in 2017 it launched an ambitious plan to host the Games with 10 other regional cities.
Yes, the idea was birthed here in Shepparton. The following few years I became mayor and became obviously very involved in the conversations, and to keep that project alive was really important to us.
Kim O'Keefe is now the National State MP for Shepparton, but in her previous role as mayor for the town, she played a key role in the Commonwealth Games proposal and a feasibility study that would investigate the viability of a regional Commonwealth Games.
It did suggest that it needed more time, and we had put up 2030 as a suggested opportunity. The pre-feasibility study suggested 2034, if not longer. So that's probably something that's been quite interesting with what has happened. Did they have enough time? We know they haven't got the money.
The feasibility study, released in 2019, noted a number of issues with hosting a regional Games and suggested holding off on the event for another 15 years. It also noted that the ongoing legacy for regional cities is somewhat diminished because the most viable, effective method of meeting Games infrastructure requirements is through the large utilisation of temporary infrastructure.
Well, I think with anything that's a significant project, you've got to do your due diligence, and we have to take advice. We're not the experts. You pass that project onto someone that's going to bring back that advice. And once it was handed to the state government, it was then out of our hands, and this is where we've ended up.
In 2022, the Victorian Premier announced a regional Commonwealth Games.
This is a Games like no other.
But the Games would be held 8 years before the suggested timeline in the Shepparton feasibility study. And in this Commonwealth Games plan, Shepparton was barely included. BMX would be held at this course, and some cycling time trials would also be held here.
We were completely snubbed when it was announced on the day. I was actually in Ballarat. My CEO at the time, Peter Harriott, and I jumped in the car, raced to Ballarat when we were told that the announcement was happening that day. We weren't even allowed on the ground for the announcement, and we stood there with such pride, knowing that we had put so much effort, and it was our idea. It was born here in Shepparton. We're very disappointed.
The 2026 Commonwealth Games are in doubt.
That's it? Is it over? What's going to happen?
Premier Dan Andrews ने आयोजन की लागत में
claiming the event is not, quote, value for money.
The Commonwealth Games Federation said they were given 8 hours notice.
Well, I put it in the bombshell category.
Last week, the Victorian Premier announced the government was pulling out of the contract to host the Games, citing massive cost overruns.
$6 to $7 billion is well and truly too much.
The Premier also said the Commonwealth Games bid was a last-minute proposal to help find a home for the event.
As a state, we were happy to help out.
Daniel Andrews saying that he did that as a quick decision, that's really disappointing. You don't make billion-dollar decisions, just as a favour or try to fill an opportunity of something that you feel needs to happen today.
But the 2017 Shepparton proposal wasn't the only Commonwealth Games plan seen by the government before it announced it had the Games in 2022. Amidst Melbourne's coronavirus crisis in 2021, 7:30 understands senior figures at Visit Victoria, the tourism arm of the Victorian Government, were pitched to regional Games by Commonwealth Games authorities. This included just 3 regional cities, with some events to be held in Melbourne. The proposals, seen by 7:30, suggested 12 venues in Melbourne and Geelong and 6 venues in Bendigo and Ballarat. Upgrades to infrastructure would cost $375 million. The total cost of the event would cost the government $1.4 billion. The plan was not embraced by Visit Victoria.
In 2022, the government announced its own plan that would cost $2.6 billion. The Games were to be held across 5 regional cities, including Shepparton, and there was an emphasis on new and temporary infrastructure, something Commonwealth Games authorities advised against.
The Victorian Government willfully ignored recommendations to move events to purpose-built stadia in Melbourne, and in fact remain wedded to proceeding with expensive temporary venues in regional Victoria.
The Victorian Government has another problem on its hands, paying for the cost of raking the contract it signed with the Commonwealth Games Federation. Sean Crichton is an Olympian turned lawyer. He previously worked for the Commonwealth Games.
The Commonwealth Games Federation hold all the power. They're the ones whose contract it is, and the Victorian Government are the ones who have breached. So they're the ones who are now on the hook for damages, whatever that amount may be.
Last week, the Victorian Government sent its solicitors, along with well-known Melbourne lawyer Leon Zwire, to London to try and negotiate an exit from its contract with the Commonwealth Games Federation. But talks didn't reach a resolution, and 730 understands that the Victorian Government may have to pay up to $500 million. Now, part of that money is to incentivise another city to host the Games, so it could be the case that Victoria partially pays for another city to host the Games.
I understand there's already been some negotiations, but they failed. But I think over the next weeks and months there's going to be a lot more.
In a statement, the Victorian Government says negotiations are still ongoing. The Premier has said the $2 billion promised to build and improve infrastructure in regional Victoria will still be spent. But in Shepparton, back where it all began, it's little consolation for former Commonwealth Games gold medalist Brett Lancaster.
We're obviously really disappointed. We were looking forward to what it could bring, you know, through the communities, from children coming along to watch.
The former champion cyclist now runs a bike shop here and says the struggling town needed the economic boost the Games promised to bring.
Sport can give a lot of hope for people, for businesses, bring people in. You know, there would be sporting events leading into this through the local council and events which will bring more people to our town. And yeah, it's tough times, and you know, we have a false sense of hope now with the rug being pulled straight out from underneath us with the Commonwealth Games being canned.
I'm sure there's a lot of people feeling very deflated and very disappointed because it was an economic opportunity for our region like we would never have seen before.